My mother was hell-bent on dragging us to synagogue. My brothers and I wanted to watch cartoons. The stakes were set, our battle lines were drawn, and the Saturday morning wars began for another week. I'm still impressed with her devotion at dragging us to services week after week. This was back in the 80s when cartoons were only on TV Saturday mornings, and every second that we could drag out this getting ready dance was a stolen treasure trove of animation. My brother and I drifted back to the television as we took turns finding excuses to stall, missing shoes, bathroom breaks, crying, hunger pains, spilled cereal, milking out as many minutes as we could. It was so unfair that we'd be stripped away from this joy to put on itchy suits and dragged to the most boring place on earth. We were always the last family to arrive. Embarrassed, my mother gave us a "don't make a noise" glare so we could slip in the back unnoticed, then greet everyone afterwards as if we'd been there the whole time. Our penny loafers clicked with each step as we got closer to the cantor's low baritone drowning on in Hebrew, Baruch atah atah. The seconds still sloshed by in those hard sanctuary seats. They were the longest of my life. I'd memorized every stained glass window, studied every image on the altar, and counted every pattern on the ceiling. My brother and I would sneak out to the bathroom protesting that we had to go so bad and we couldn't hold it. And 20 minutes later, my mother would come out screaming through her clenched teeth as we played paper football with ripped up flyers advertising the sisterhood bruncheon. As I got older, I did my best to step away from all this joyless dogma that my religion encompassed. I was dragged to holiday services and celebrated with family, but I also read up on Eastern philosophy and poked holes in our strict observances as my circle widened to encompass Christians, Mormons, Buddhists, and Hindus. The religion that had defined so much of who my family was didn't seem to have room for those who were different. I eventually ended up settling on the other side of the country, where I was free to avoid any sort of religious observances. The only time that I was proper Jew-guilted to go home was for the occasional Passover Seder meal. It was something I could not escape, and I dreaded it. My grandfather had always thrown this epic, never-ending Seder. His whole career he had been a cantor who led the services of the synagogue, and that meant that no page or passage was skipped out of the Haggadah. The meal was served painstakingly slow, and every course was accompanied by an explanation, ritual, and more prayers. We were starving. The festival meal dragged out for hours, until midnight frequently. Family members with babies would beg him to finish, so we could just have to sing every song, though, as he pointed to half-asleep family members to recite their portion. Then about 7 years ago, he passed away, and he was gone, and so were his seders. Over time, I'd often lost brothers and uncles who were prime personalities in those meals. When I began to digitize our home movies, I rewatched these seders again with new eyes, and it filled me with joy. Everyone was suffering in unison. We laughed in frustration as my uncles bullied their way through expedited songs. The 4 questions, always asked by the youngest member of my family, would be directed at embarrassed teenagers. These slivers of seders were time capsules of my childhood. It wasn't about belief in anything greater than belief in my own family's identity. My mother had picked up the mantle of the Seder leader, adding her own pages to the service and channeling my grandfather. This was the most salient link to my past, and I began looking forward to making new memories every year. It made me feel closer to the people I had left and the ones I had lost. Last year, she explained that she couldn't handle the cooking and cleanup with her health problems. My younger brother and I promised that we would make it easy. She was given strict orders to only cook a few items instead of the ambitious recipes she always tried to do all at once every year. We would buy the rest. We followed Hurricane Sarah around the kitchen, as I called her, since she never put anything away, leaving a trail of spills, spices, pots, pans, and bowls, a tsunami of kitchen carnage. We washed every pot as she worked, cleaned every surface, and plated things, setting tables and organizing Seder plates. And when she was ready to tackle the next task on her list, they were all done. She did her Seder, and it was a worthy successor to my Zeta Maris, her father. She shared photos on Facebook of her two sons who made this happen. I flew back to California and got a frantic 3 a.m. call that she had to go through the dumpster and pull out the cracked disposable plates that we had thrown out because they were very expensive special plates for Passover, and even though the silver coating was peeling off, they were fine to use for years to come. But that's my mother. This year, COVID-19 made gathering for a Seder out of the question. In all this fog of abnormality, this was the most poignant. This was the one time a year we got together. I'd been calling my parents every day, sending masks and mailing out hand sanitizers, and making sure that she wasn't getting all her medical guidance from Fox News. She was stuck in Florida where they wintered. As two high-risk people at a time when both Florida and Texas were blowing up, traveling back to Dallas wasn't an option. I got off the phone with her a week before we would have had our first Seder, and I heard the profound sadness in her voice. I wanted to fix this. She needed this. I needed this. We all needed this. I called my sister-in-law and asked her if she could be free for a Zoom Seder. She protested, but I have to clean, I don't have all this stuff. I explained to her that literally nobody would see the house or the table. Hell, you could fake it with all the Seder plate items. This was really for my mother. I left my younger brother voicemails, text messages, and emails over several days. This was the bare minimum to get him to respond. I locked him down for the time and told him to please be punctual, knowing that he would probably show up in the first hour or so, maybe, if we were lucky. In the days following up, I argued with my mother to please use a standard digital Haggadah book for the Seder that we could all access from Dallas, Florida, and California where we were scattered. She insisted that we had to use the one that she had in her house because it was the best one, so it sent me on a next-door spiral of Haggadah hunting. Finally, the night before, an elderly lady 5 miles away offered to leave it outside her door in exchange for homemade hand sanitizer. I locked my mother down for 2 hours of meticulous run-throughs of the video conferencing app, painstakingly running her through every step and repeating it. I sent her a video tutorial I made with written instructions, and I sat there with her saying there was really just 4 clicks, but somehow it became a frustrated, tear-filled melee of click the 3 dots. Don't click the X, not the X. Why did you click the X? The 3 dots. It's 3 dots in the right-hand corner. It looks like 3 dots. Put your glasses on. Why did you click the X again? The Seder came and it went perfect without any issues, is what I'd like to say, but that's a lie. There's this 2-minute video of me seeming like I'm being excessively cruel to my mother over technology. But again, we walked through this app and worked hard over 2 hours to avoid this. 45 minutes in, my mother asked where my younger brother was. I explained that I called, texted, and emailed several times throughout the day, and we are going on without him. He suddenly popped up on screen, shirtless, holding his dog. No wine, Seder plate, Haggadah, or anything, but we pushed on. My nephews drifted on and off the screen. Most of the time, you could only see the top of my mother's head. We had to spend 10 minutes asking her to pull the screen back momentarily so we could acknowledge the existence of my father. We talked as we ate. My mother delegated songs to various family members. We laughed. Pets took over the screens. The Seder went too long. Audio cut out. And it felt oddly normal. And even though we were staring at each other through computer screens and tablets, it felt like we were just a family, sitting together for a meal and carrying on a tradition that we'd suffered through for generations.